Okay, so now let's gain a deeper understanding of the art and science of architecting successful mergers and acquisitions. Our esteemed panel of leaders is ready to share their invaluable experience and knowledge, insights, and techniques that have helped them achieve remarkable results in this field. Please welcome the session's moderator, Hrideja Shah, who is the corporate associate at Inventus Law, to take us through this session along with our panelists. We have the dynamic Mr. Rhett Francisco, who is the lead trial attorney and litigator with Employee Justice Legal Group. We have Cynthia Petersen, attorney at Petersen Law and QDROs LLC. We have Ms. Racquel Bradley, community leader of JMZ Processing LLC, and Lisa Anna Palmer, founder and CEO of Light Your Leadership. Let's give a resounding applause for our panelists.
All right, I think all of you need some coffee. There's a coffee cart right behind, guys. Okay, so let's get started. The topic, as you know, is architecting successful M&A. And before we start, one of our panelists is actually having a beautiful baby right now, so he unfortunately could not join us. But hopefully we will still have a very successful panel and give you some insight in M&A. So today I stand here before you discussing regarding how to architect a successful M&A. And there are certain key factors that I really believe go into architecting a successful M&A, starting with, of course, evaluating the company's process, considering what the laws are, the regulatory compliances that will go into it, the due diligence that would go into the companies, how well the companies actually merge, whether both the companies are financially fit for each other, culturally fit for each other, and whether all of the IP, the contracts, the agreements, all of the legal work that goes into M&A is actually, right for both the companies. So rather than delving more into just legal frameworks that go for M&A, today we have here a very different and diverse panel. Each of us have very different expertise in the sector of M&A. So Lisa, I'd like to start with you. You have actually lived through the PwC merger. And so starting with, I want to know what your experience was as an employee.
I won't let you. Hello? Okay, there we go. Yes, I lived through it, operative word. So what was funny is I was only maybe 25 or 26 years old. I was a management consultant, or maybe, actually by then I was probably senior management consultant. And I was working on the organizational renewal side, transition management, advising leaders on the impacts of downsizing and other major initiatives, reengineering, et cetera, on the people of the organization, because I studied psychology and I was really passionate about people's experience at work. So here I was just about to leave for a one-year sabbatical because my husband was going to Teachers College in Windsor, Ontario, so we're from Ottawa, Ontario. And they brought us, the partners brought us into a room. And I have to say, the partners were really great. We taught organizational renewal and transition management and all that stuff. And even so, it was still kind of difficult. So they brought us into a room, and I'm like, that was the first time in my career that happened, right? So I'm like, what's going on? Why are they bringing us into a room, right? And that's kind of the experience people have, is like, okay, whoa, what's going to happen? It's not like we were going to see a speaker or anything like that. It's like they just brought us all into the room. There's about 150 of us in the Ottawa office. And I was working with Coopers & Lybrand at the time. It was in the mid-90s. And so I'm standing there. I'm looking at, because I was the youngest one in the office. So I'm looking at my colleagues, and they're kind of got this panicky look on their face. And I'm like, oh, what's about to drop here? and then they announced it. They said Coopers & Lybrand would merge with Price Waterhouse, and then basically I had question marks. I'm like, what does that mean? Right? I wasn't even sure what does merger mean, for a 20-something who had studied psychology, and I was only concerned about people at work. So then, after we left the meeting, that's when things really started happening. This is like people are in the, talking about it, what's going on, oh my gosh, and that's when I started to realize, oh, this is serious business. Possibly I won't have a job when I come back from my sabbatical. I don't know. And it was very scary, I have to say, once I realized what was happening. And so I think that from that perspective, and I don't know if you want me to elaborate this now or later.
We can actually go into, how effectively do you think the leadership roles matter when the M&A happens?
Oh, they're crucial.
And of course, the cultural integration of...
Crucial. So as I said, remember, so the group I was part of was the organizational renewal group, and the partner was really great. So even with the circumstances, they followed by the book, it was still scary, right? So no matter what you do, you need to understand that people are going to be afraid and struggle through it, even if you do everything right. So that's where it's really important to be compassionate, keep your door open, learn how to hold space for emotions. That's one of the biggest things. So I work in leadership. I'm a coach, leadership development trainer, etc. And one of the things that people tend to struggle with the most is how to handle emotional reactions. And my biggest message is there. You're a leader. Get used to it. It's going to happen all the time. So you either try to run away from it, avoid it. That'll lead to conflict and all kinds of cases, or you can learn how to hold that space for the person to process as a human being, right? So they did that for us, but it was still scary. Now, going back, I'm going to put on my leadership development hat, my transition management hat. So it's important to understand that whenever you're doing major organizational changes, and I've led lots of reorganizations and restructurings, et cetera, since then, that change is on the outside. It's external, right? Something, need for, change of structure, need for a merger, an acquisition, need for whatever happens, a new IT system even, right? So that's external. What happens at the same time, so we tend to manage change externally, more or less well, depending on the organization. What tends to be forgotten is what William Bridges tried to teach us a couple decades ago, is that human beings experience the transition within. So that's how the human being processes change and goes through 3 major stages. So the first one is the ending stage. The middle one is the neutral zone, and finally the new beginnings. Now, what happens is, because we like to rush things through, or we don't like to deal with emotions, is we go from announce the change, we skip over endings, we skip over neutral zone, and we go right into new beginnings. Hey, suck it up, buttercup. It's going to be great. Fantastic. It'll be wonderful. Well, guess what? If you're merging, that's not going to happen, right? Because maybe people will be nodding and saying, okay, yeah, sure. But the struggle that they're experiencing inside, if you're not going to handle it properly and have the proper interventions, what's going to happen is people are either going to leave, they'll stay, and maybe it'll be presenteeism where they're showing up and it looks like they're working, but you're not seeing results. It could be sick leave. Some people take it so hard that it affects their system. What happens emotionally has an impact on the physical body as well. So all kinds of negative outcomes come from when transition is not being, first of all, acknowledged, that people go through a process that is basically reliant on emotions, and they go through a process. There's grieving. In ending stage, if you're familiar with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross and the 5 stages of grief, well, that's what the person's experiencing. And also, you think you're out of the woods, like, okay, I can see people are starting to kind of get back, at it and stuff like that, and oops, small little thing might trigger it, might go back. Right? So that's at the individual level. Now, when you bring that up to the organizational level, so you're dealing basically in a merger with 2 companies or more coming together, so you can understand how the effects of it are going to be exponential. Really. It's like volcanic. And so not only you're dealing with individuals within an organization, you're dealing with individuals' processes, and everybody goes through it differently in two organizations, and you're bringing them together. Now, what do you think happens when you bring two organizations together? What's the first kind of thing? Anyone want to take a gander? What happens with the people? Yes? Go ahead. Yes.
Absolutely.
Is he a plant?
Yeah, I think I was talking to him before when I was running.
Good job, Lisa. Good job.
No, but that's great, right? So that's very important. And I would say, yes, integration at the policy level, and when you're integrating payroll systems and all that stuff and all the systems, that's the actually easy stuff. Right? So then when you're dealing with different personalities, it turns into an us and them. Well, in our case, one group was, a different demographic, slightly younger, more into, having fun at work. We were like more consultants, and then the other side was more like the accounting, more serious, more traditional. And then they were bringing these groups together, And fortunately, they were used to facilitating these kinds of things, so they had the tools. But can you imagine two companies who don't have any of these tools in terms of transition management and change management and all that stuff, and they say, oh, well, just going to put these two companies together, and we're going to, they're going to figure it out. Well, they won't. That's why 90% of mergers and acquisitions fail. So if you're going to do this, make sure that a big piece of your strategy deals with the people risk. If you were at the panel a couple days ago, we talked extensively about, I talked extensively about people risk, and that it will impact your bottom line for sure. Ask anybody who during the pandemic, they had the great resignation and they didn't have enough staff to be able to even run a McDonald's or a 7-Eleven. It impacts your bottom line. So if that's what you're concerned about, think about that. If you're more concerned about the human element, think about that people are struggling and suffering. So you need to go through the stages, really bring people together, not only announce to them what's going on, make space for them to share what they're living through. And also, very, very important, equip your middle managers. This is going to be the hardest thing they'll ever have to deal with. First of all, they're dealing with their own fear and transition, and also now they're having to hold space for others. So you need to help them learn how to hold space, how to handle it when people get upset at work. Not to go on the defensive. It's more about validating. So here are 5 steps on how, and it's inspired by emotional coaching. Okay, so the first thing when people are going through a rough time, and if you're doing a merger and acquisition, make sure you do this, right? Is number 1 is you attend. Attend means listening. I'm creating a safe space. I'm not going on the defensive every time you share something. I'm scared. I'm worried about, oh no, and denying it. No, you listen. Listen attentively. You attend. The second thing is to validate. Now, validate doesn't mean that you agree with everything, right? Validate just means that you've seen and heard the person and you acknowledge their experience, whatever that experience might be. The third thing is normalizing. Normalizing means that you are not only saying, I hear you, I see you, you're saying, you know what, of course, you're going through a merger, an acquisition, it's scary. I'm scared too. It's normal, you're not alone. When people hear you're not alone, that goes a long way. And the other thing, I believe in you. I believe in you, I believe in our team. We'll get through this. It's not gonna be easy, don't lie. It's not gonna be easy, we'll get through this. And then after that, once you've attended to, you validated, you normalize, then you go to strategize. Okay, so this is where you're trying to bring people together, have solution, engage them as much as possible in the solution finding of the way forward so that, and if you're having 2 cultures, bring the people together from the 2 cultures to brainstorm, create opportunities for them to network, to do fun things together. You need to build that culture up. So develop that strategy piece has to be very much on how do we bring people together to feel like they're a team. And an example, which I know that Racquel will talk about soon, is bringing them together over a common cause. So this is where your social responsibility strategy can really help. Let's mobilize people around something important. and Racquel will
Okay,
will share.
so
Sorry. Yes. I was making up for Rhett. And over to you.
okay, so as we know, thank you so much, Lisa. So from what we understand is that a successful M&A is not driven solely by a financial gain, but by a well-defined strategic vision. The organizations involved have to really look at the long-term goals, whether it's processing, new markets, new technology, integrating people, or even just understanding what the company would look like post-integration. But before we move on to, the corporate social responsibility, there are a lot of things that us lawyers have to look at. And yes, we're the ones that, don't look at the human element, but
You will from now on, though.
I will from now on, though. I'll be sure to ask my boss, what about the employees, though?
There you go.
But I think one of the more important things with employees, we all depend on our organizations to give us certain benefits, be it insurance for health, or be it the 401k, or be it a retirement plan. And all of these things also need to be considered in a successful M&A. It's not only about how well the financials are, how well the due diligence is, whether they have all of their corporate records in place. That's preliminary, but what happens to the retirement plans or the insurances once both companies merge? So, Cynthia, I would like to take it over to you. Since your expertise lies in ERISA laws and retirement plans, how have you experienced that these laws play out in a merger and acquisition, and how do you think lawyers should look at it to actually make it a successful M&A?
Thank you, Hrideja. The problem that a lot of M&As have is that the team they put together is made up of people who use their left brain. They're accountants and the attorneys, a lot of whom are very analytical, and that type of person on the strategy team. And what they forget to put in there is the person who can address the human element. One of those things that employees are going to immediately feel when they are told that there is a change in their company is, what happens to my insurance? I have this ongoing illness, and if I change insurances, what's going to happen? If I am 45 years old or 50 years old and I've been contributing to my 401k savings plan for the last 15, 20 years, and now you're telling me I'm starting over? And those are the concerns that the company needs to address. And before they even get that far, they have to look at the old company, the one they're acquiring, the assets they're acquiring, whatever they're doing with the company, and determine, number one, do we keep those benefits in place? Do we merge them into new benefits, or do we run them separately? And of course, obviously, there are pros and cons to each. And what they have to do in their due diligence is they have to actually go back and look at what the other company that they're purchasing or the assets they're purchasing, what have they been doing for their practices? What have they been doing for their accountability? And so in order to meet all the regulations and the rules for the successful M&A, they have to know that what they're acquiring isn't defective. In 401ks and pensions, which are defined contribution benefits, which is the 401k where you're putting money into it, and the defined benefit plans, those are like the pensions where you end up with a monthly pension benefit when you retire. Those are regulated, if it's a private sector, through ERISA, which is the Employee Retirement Income Securities Act of 1974. That was put in place because companies were having these great benefits for people, then say, oh, we couldn't fund it. Sorry, you just retired. Oh, I'm sorry, you don't have a pension now. So ERISA said, no, that's not going to happen. But when they did that, they also had very strict regulations. These were put into place to be retirement plans, not savings plans where you can take money in and out. And so when companies are looking at the 401k or the pension of the company they're acquiring, the company they're merging with, They have to determine whether it's a viable plan to actually bring forward. If they find that it's not worth bringing forward into merging or to starting over, they need to terminate it. And when that happens, then the employees are treated as if they had terminated their employment, and they can take out their monies. But what happens then is when they start over with the new plan, now they have their 5-year vesting term where the employer might be matching monies and they're not getting it. So the company has to look very carefully. There are 3 things they can do. They can run them simultaneously, very expensive administratively to run 2 plans. And there's a risk if the other plan was defective in some way with its regulations, because when they are running 2 plans, ERISA requires them to do all of the coverage and non-discrimination. For example, you have to have these certain employees all have to be able to have the 401k. Have they met that at the old company? So that type of thing. Is there enough funds that are covered by the insurance that's required to be covered? So if you run those simultaneously, they still have to have the same compliance. And then if you merge them, obviously, if you merge one 401k into another one and the old one had problems, you can lose your qualification under ERISA under the new plan. So then what happens is, okay, well, we'll just terminate that plan and we'll start over. And again, like the employee is concerned, I'm starting over. And so with retirement plans, you see a lot of this. Citgo is an example of somebody that's eaten up a lot of places. I do retirement plan division. That's qualified domestic relations orders, QDROs. That's my niche practice. And when people get a divorce, they really don't know what their benefits are. Companies are not good about telling people what their exact benefits are. So they say, I have a Citgo pension. That's great. Which one do you have? Well, the one that Citgo has. That's great. You work at Citgo. Which pension plan is it? Well, the pension plan that they gave me. And that's more information than I got than their attorney probably got during their divorce. And so I have to do the digging. Which pension plan is it? And so I need the plan document. I need the statement that they have. They have to contact and actually find out what benefit they have. And that's a result of all of these merging of plans together. And so it continues, that effect continues even after the merger and acquisition.
Wow, thank you so much, Cynthia. To carry on with the legal compliances, I'll be taking over some of Red's part as well today. So there are several key legal factors in an M&A that need to be considered. One of them, of course, that Cynthia talked about is the retirement plans and the ERISA laws, the 401k merging. But what we don't understand is that apart from the regulations that apply for employees, there are several other regulations that are quite often missed out, such as antitrust and competition laws. So we need to assess the potential impact the merger and acquisition would have on the companies. If, for example, let's say a US company was acquiring a French company, what are the possible antitrust and competition laws that will be affected? Because both nations have different laws. The regulatory compliances, for example, determining if there are any specific regulations or licenses that may impact the merger or acquisition. So consider industry-specific regulations such as healthcare, finance, telecommunications, energy, and just ensuring compliance with all of those relevant laws. You have your intellectual property rights. So, of course, this is a very sensitive topic because each company, if they don't own their own IP, then really the company's worth nothing. The company is valued at the IP that it owns, which is the intellectual property that it owns. So all of the work that the employees do is normally assigned to the companies directly via their employment agreements and the confidentiality agreements that they sign. So conducting a thorough review of the IP portfolios of both companies, that is one of the major compliances that we need to be looking at. The contracts, the agreements, and obligations of both companies. For example, if they have a service agreement and the company has an indemnification clause which basically states that if any loss happens, the company is liable. That's a huge liability, and why would any company want to take that up? Going into employment, labor laws impact, how those laws impact, because you may have, in US, for example, you have California-specific laws, you have Delaware-specific laws. So how each of these laws actually play out when the employees are being merged, you have your data privacy, the litigation, the legal disputes, all of these amount to a comprehensive due diligence process, which actually makes a successful M&A, because if lawyers miss out on these tiny compliances, then the very first step has been missed. So of course the employees, the retirement plans, all of that gets affected. Moreover, I think the communication and transparency play a vital role in managing expectations and building trust between the companies, which Lisa talked about. So how exactly do we manage these communications? What is the best way that we can ensure that there's a wholesome merger and acquisition that's taking place, and not just, hey, lawyers have signed all the paperwork, they've sent us, we've been merged, we're good to go.
We're good to go.
We're good to go. That's literally how.
We'll come in on Monday.
That's how we are. I mean, like, hey, all the stockholders have been sent their signature pages, they've signed, the merger agreement is in place. You're good to go.
You're good to go.
We don't deal with the post-merger integration and how those play out. Of course, if there are any legal compliances, I'll be there. But if you're telling me, hey, I'm really depressed, I don't like the new team that I'm working with,
Well,
you're merged. Right?
well, and like what stood out to me is when you mentioned like bringing people from two countries.
Yeah.
A huge part of your strategy better be cross-cultural training.
Yeah.
Like you could just imagine how difficult it would be for people with different languages coming together, different ways of thinking. Like, it needs to be addressed. It needs to be a huge part of your strategy.
It does. And honestly, this is what we don't look at, right? But this is where you step in. So there needs to be Lisa in every company that's getting
amen.
But so how do we actually ensure that there's a wholesome, post-integration after a merger or acquisition has taken place? And that's where corporate social responsibility really plays a significant role, because it refers to the company's commitment that, they're operating ethically, they're contributing positively to the society, minimizing any negative impact there may be on employees. And when it comes to M&A, corporate social responsibility considerations can actually heavily influence the decision-making process and actually shape the integration of both the teams. So, Racquel, over to you. What role do you think corporate social responsibility plays? And tell us about the common cause that you believe could actually bring two different cultures or just two completely different set of people together.
I think that with the corporate, they should take in consideration with hello. Okay, you can hear me now. I think they should take in consideration with partnering with a lot of smaller businesses. A lot of corporations partner with each other because the money is there. Like they get when the contracts are there, the money is there. When it comes down to smaller businesses, it's like sometimes a lot of corporations won't have the patience for the smaller businesses. And I can speak for myself. I go around, I have a men's program, and I also feed homeless. And I'm trying to build them back up into today's society. Thank you, girl. I see you. I'm trying to build them up in today's society. And if a corporation, for instance, if a corporation was to merge with me and become one company together, we can help so many different men in today's society. For example, I did some statistics because somebody told me to. Welding. I have my vice president, he's a welder, and they work him almost like 7 days, like a week, you know what I'm saying? He works a lot because there's no welding jobs out there. But mind you, I live in Florida. I can go to Jacksonville in one area in Jacksonville, we have over 100 men on the streets there. I go to under the bridge in Miami, there's over 200 men under the bridge in Miami. If we were to build these men up and then merge with these companies, these bigger companies, we will have the workforce out there. So the American Welding Society, they need 400,000 men right now for work in 2023. They need to buy 2024. Now, we have a whole bunch of men that are wanting to work, but this world is against them. They don't know where to go, who to go to, but if they come to like somebody like us who will help them build them up, put them in trade school, get the skills that they're looking for, and then we connect with these corporate buildings, I'm sorry, organizations, I'm sorry. And we connect with the corporate organizations. They can just call us and say, hey, do you have 10 men for the job for welding? Hey, construction, they need, right now, construction is a major thing. They're looking for, by the end of 2023, they need 546,000 men on top of what they're already hiring on their regular hiring pace to meet the demands of constructions in the U.S. right now. Mind you, we have a whole bunch of men on the street that are looking for jobs, that want the help, but they don't know where to go. And like our resource center, we try to build them up. I try to do it differently in a sense. Like there's a rehab, we have a rehab, a drug rehab, substance abuse, and because that's one of the main things I see on the streets. But instead of us saying, hey, go into there, go to rehab, and they're behind 4 white walls, we are actually trying to integrate agriculture as well, so that way they can raise chickens, raise cows, learn how to grow food, and they have a life skills. And agriculture is going down as well. So now we have men that we build back up with this life skill, and then we can start implementing more fresh market stores. There's a lot that we can do if these corporations were willing to merge with smaller companies and willing to give these smaller companies a chance. But I think right now, like our hardest, like the hardest problem is just corporations team with other corporations because they have the money. But I feel like if they just give some of these smaller businesses a chance, we can make a difference. Our streets will be a lot cleaner. Our men will be back in today's society. They'll be able to grow. They will have something to hold on to, and they will fight for what they have, because right now they don't have anything. Once they lose something, they lost. Like they're like at rock bottom. Like they don't see a way out. But if they team with somebody like such as our company, they will see a pathway. They know they have something that they can. They will have something to do. Tradesmen, believe it or not, the applications for tradesmen in schools, like enrolling in schools, went down 49%. They are looking for so many people, so they don't have electricians, plumbers, and we have so many men who qualify, who are capable of doing it. They just don't know where to go. They don't have the funds to get the schooling. They just need the help, but they're easily overlooked. Even when I was reading the statistics, they were saying that, a lot of the younger men are not applying, and then they're saying that the older men, older people, they're retiring. But it's like, okay, you guys are overlooking the fact that we have men that are capable of doing it. If we bring these men and build these men back up, these young men will see that our men are starting to get back on their feet, and then it will be a continued cycle. But we have to face the main problem, which is we have so many men on the street, and they could be in today's working society, but it's like, how do we do that? We have to build them up, and it's harder for like somebody like myself to build them up because it's only me, and I only have so much money. But if these corporations were to invest, we can like, it could be something nationwide, internationally, because men are needing help everywhere you go. Like, I've traveled so many places, and it's always men that are laying down on the streets. And if we can get them back up, like, it will bring so much balance, so much peace and understanding in this world. But we just have to, I feel like if corporations could just merge with some of these smaller businesses, it will bring so much balance. It's like it's time to stop overlooking the real problem, and it seems like we've been overlooking the real problem for too long. And right now, men are the ones that are being overlooked. Us women, we can go through whatever and have the resources, but our men, they have nothing. So it's time for us to stop ignoring them and bring them back into society. And yeah, that's my speech.
So, so from what I understand, what Racquel is trying to say is that corporations, after they've actually merged, they really need to look into the corporate social responsibilities as a corporation they have. So, for example, if the employees have certain skill sets, they could actually go to smaller businesses like Racquel's, where they could provide those skills, actually have a team building exercise out of it, because most mergers happen, like you said, with corporations that have a direct link as to, you know, whether they'll be able to actually combine the resources that they have and build a stronger company. So that's what most mergers and acquisitions in today's world look at. They don't really look at how exactly they could, you know, contribute back to the society, which, you know, unfortunately is always how it's been. Most companies look at finances. They look at how our software would get better or how we'll be a better, you know, technological company. Go ahead, Lisa.
Just quickly, so imagine rallying the people in your organizations that you brought together around such causes. It brings meaning and purpose, and that's how you get through difficult times. I think I also heard the other opportunity that Racquel was mentioning is when somebody's considering a merger or acquisition. I know that there's a lot of socially responsible B Corps now, and instead of naturally just going to other B Corps that are just as big or whatnot, maybe considering small businesses that were started by people who are helping men or other causes like that, and merging with that. And so you're bringing these smaller entities back into your company, and then therefore making sure that they're well-resourced, that they have access to everything that they need to succeed.
And they have a 401k.
Absolutely.
And they have a 401k. So in summary, what really corporate social responsibility considerations in M&A transactions are, they go beyond financial and operational aspects. They encompass ethical, social, environmental dimensions that can actually contribute to the long-term sustainability, not just of the company, but also to the society, and actually have a successful merged entity. So by recognizing the role of CSR, which is corporate social responsibility, companies can actually align their values, mitigate risks, enhance their brand reputation, because as we all know, if you do anything social work and you put it out on the internet and it goes viral, you automatically have a brand reputation. So companies should actually look at that positively, you know, affected their brand, and hopefully they actually, whatever reason they do it for, it actually helps the society and actually contributes positively back to it. So I would actually just like to summarize our conversation today. So as we know, in today's fast-paced business environment, M&As have become increasingly common strategies for growth and consolidation. However, from what we understand is that it is crucial to actually look at what goes into a successful merger. So having careful planning, execution, integration of the complex transactions. Do I have 30 more seconds? Okay. I have 10 seconds. Okay, great. So basically what we looked at is beyond legal and regulatory compliances, we have the human element, which is the stakeholders, the employees who actually need to be addressed. We have the essential plans that most of us rely on, which is given by our organizations, and looking at how those are successfully merged. And finally, post-integration, how the cultural integration of both companies happens can also be through team building exercises and providing back to the society just by having some social responsibility. So that's what actually architects a successful M&A, not just what we do as lawyers, which is giving you all the legal paperwork and saying you're good to go. But thank you so much for being here today. And that's my cue to get off.
Well done. Thank you.